Myfanwy. I think I know most of you, at least sort of in passing. Some of you I know better. I live down in Bringwell. I am the Officer Application Coordinator. And the reason why I am that is because I decided we needed to have this office position that made it easier for applicants. I was noticing that people were hesitant to put their application in. People were going, I don't even know where to send it. They weren't sure what to do once they got a position. And so I went to the Kingdom Seneschal and I said, hey, I work in HR. I want to basically create an HR position to make it easier for Ansiora to get the volunteers we need to hold the positions that we have in our kingdom. So I took on the job thinking, oh, I'll do this. Well, then I sat down at the job and I went, oh, the first thing that needs to happen is our application system needs to be easier. So what do I need to do? And so at that point, I got the application sent to me so I could forward it to the correct people, because a lot of times somebody will put in the application, they don't know who it needs to go to, so they just send it to the Baron and Baroness, which is great. That's at least one of the people you might need to send it to, but they forget to send it to the regional, they forget to send it to the local officer and things like that. So we created a process where it came to the Officer Application Coordinator. That person forwards it to all the required people, because it's my job to know who those people are. And that way it was easier for step one, the person to apply. I also looked at it and went, we need to make the application simpler. I was getting a whole bunch of applications that came in, and it said, you know, that they were from Namron and they wanted to be Seneschal. I didn't know if they wanted to be Seneschal of Namron, Seneschal of the Northern Region, Seneschal of one of the local cantons. Didn't know. So we've changed the application a little bit. My goal of this session was to hear from people, what are some other things? I can tell you what I'm going to be doing next, but I want to hear from others. What are some other things that will make it easier for you to put in an application and make it more accessible for our new people? Because our organization is only as strong as people feel comfortable to take on those leadership roles. I already have a peerage. I'm already a leader. My goal is to encourage other people to be leaders. I want them to come in and say, I can do this. This is something I'm passionate about, and I can do this, and I'm going to do it. That's where my goal is how to make that job easier for everybody else. So I thought my next step was to create officer manuals, which it will happen. But what I realized was the next step is an organizational chart. So my officer application coordinator job, which I thought, oh, I'll make this onboarding manual, I'll make these onboarding things. I haven't even gotten to that, because first I had to do applications, and I had to figure out how to get those applications sent to the right people. And then I realized organizational chart's more important. So that's the other thing I kind of want to express to people, especially when you create your own job, which I did. And you sometimes sit down going, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I think Nikay's has kind of had this with some of her positions too, where you sit down and you go, oh, I'm going to take this office, I'm going to do this over here, and I'll be fine. And then somebody says, oh, but I really need you to do this. Or you sit down and you go, oh, well, that needs to happen. This is a higher priority. So I'm also kind of here to say, always expect your office to not be what you expect, and to just go with the flow. So those are my big things. So I don't have a lot to say. My biggest things with offices is that the easiest way to know what am I supposed to do is to talk to the person who currently holds it. And that doesn't matter if you're talking about a local deputy to the seneschal in charge of demos, to the I see Nikay, so the financial committee member at large, to a regional exchequer, to a deputy seneschal in charge of waivers, to creating your own position, to that kingdom level positions. All of those positions, step one of finding out, can I do this job, is to talk to the person who's currently doing it. it's also good to talk to other people who have done it, because everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. That's why I don't like to see offices where the person sits there for 4 years. They might be doing a great job for what they can do, but their abilities and I'm using Nikay's because she's sitting there in my face. Nikay's abilities are going to be different strengths. You know, when I'm in my barony and I'm looking at my seneschals and I'm going, okay, well, who would be a good seneschal? Well, this person might have been a really good planner and visionary and could see what we could do in the future. Well, they've done that for 2 years, and that's great. We needed that for 2 years. But next, we may need somebody who is a right now, fix the problem, immediate solutions, that kind of person. And so you have to, I always look at offices as you have to change it over so you can resolve some of the weaknesses of somebody else with another person's strengths. So even if you're not the best exact duplicate of who's currently having it, frequently there is something that you can bring that is strong for that position. An example, when I was regional seneschal, I had finished following somebody who was really good at getting the offices to report on time and getting everything so that the paperwork was there. Where they weren't very strong in was dealing with the conflicts in the group and the personalities and how to talk to that person who just doesn't quite get along with so-and-so over here and all of that. And so and also even having the pulse. I mean, sometimes you have to have somebody who doesn't even have to have the person come to them, but instead goes, hey, I'm hearing that through the grapevine that George is having problems with Stephen. Can you tell me what's going on? Okay, let me go talk to George and Stephen. Let's figure out what they're going. So you have to have that. But if we hadn't had somebody who was really good at paperwork, the person who was good with the people skills following that wouldn't have been as useful, because now the paperwork's still going. It would be 4 years of the paperwork being under control and like that. So does that kind of make some sense? So I always feel that you need to balance your strengths and your weaknesses, and everybody has strengths and weaknesses. And so it is good for us to change offices. I think that one of the worst officers in the world is somebody who says, oh, well, there's nobody else who can do this. The minute you say, I'm the only one who can do this job, is, in my opinion, the minute you need to be stepping down. You are no longer being effective. And that, to me, doesn't matter if you're talking about the Baron and Baroness, if you're talking about your Seneschal, if you're talking about your Marshal, any of those levels. The minute you say, I'm the only one who can do it, is the minute you need to be getting yourself out of that position. So
can I ask a question?
Yes, please do.
It happens, unfortunately, but you have the person that was previously holding the office and they poof.
Yep.
And you might not know what it entails. What are your suggestions, or what is the tack to go recreate, to figure out what this job needs to be doing without accidentally dropping things?
So, I mean, first thing is, remember, although each of our offices are very important, we are a volunteer organization. And so ultimately, if something gets dropped, as long as it's not a legal requirement, it's not that big of a deal. And if it's a legal requirement, that's up to the seneschal to say, hey, I need you to do this because this is this job's responsibility. So that's caveat number one. But in those situations, if you're a deputy to an office, so in your case, you're the Marshalate Secretary, you're deputy to the Earl Marshal, of course, you're going to talk to the Earl Marshal. The Earl Marshal is going to give you, well, I don't know what all they did before, but for me, these are the things I need to have done. Or if it's a position like the Waiver Secretary, because the Waiver Secretary, frequently the officer goes poof, you talk to other people who have done the position. sometimes it's hard to find out the information. There are some heralds positions that I know go through random, nobody holds the office, and they go, oh, I don't know who held it last. So sometimes that information is difficult to come by, and that's when you just have to talk to as many people as you can about, so what do you think the waiver officer needs to do? Or what do you think the arbalist herald, I don't know, that might be a herald name, I don't know, I'm making something up. So if it is, I'm sorry. What do you think the arbalist herald needs to do, or whatever it is that is there? We definitely need to have an officer handbook. The challenge is in our kingdom, well, actually, it doesn't matter. In any kingdom, we have our main offices, but we have deputies that are key projects, right? And that's where the challenge becomes. Not every kingdom has a marshalate secretary. I think we're the first kingdom that has any kind of HR person of my sort, because I'm creating this position. But having an officer handbook is useful. The other thing that frequently comes with most of the offices are email accounts. And so the other thing I would recommend is looking through your emails and seeing what kind of emails happened in the past. And if it's an office that you're following that maybe the officer didn't do a good job, go look through your emails and find the position before and how did they do the job? What all did they have to accomplish while they were in that position? You know, did they have monthly reports, biannual reports? What did they have as far as that goes? And that's another way, especially as that email access is available. I admit I don't know that I have had an office that had a consistent email address since, well, I was Baron and Baroness, but even that we created and handed it over. It was not on the Unstern Kingdom. So it has been a while since I've had an Unstern Kingdom email account, but hopefully people start to use those. They're supposed to be, and that should go, as that builds, that should give more data. So are there, so I guess my question to you guys, what do you want to see from the HR support?
I have a very easy one, hopefully.
Okay.
The office or the PDF form to fill in for the application, is that going to get converted to a fill-in one as opposed to the one that we had previously? I don't know the right words for all of this, but I know that some of the PDFs you can actually click and fill in the lines.
So actually what we have created is an online application form where you fill it in all online and it sends it directly to us. The only challenge with that one is that you do have to send any attachments to the officer application coordinator email address, and it has the email address on the application web page. And so talking to John, he kind of wanted to go away from the PDF fill-in form, and he just wanted us to have that. But that means that if you have, well, first, any of your, you know, when you apply, you have to have your membership card. So your membership card would have to be sent separately. If you're applying for treasurer, your driver's license would have to be sent separately. And if you had any, like if you wanted to send your CV because you're applying for a high-level job that your CV could show this is why you'd be good in that position, that would be sent separately. But then it would be my responsibility to forward it to the correct people. Like your driver's license would only get forwarded to the treasurer and things like that. That kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that helps, because I always hated filling out that form because it was a pain. On that application, does it send you a copy as well?
No, but it has this place to put in email addresses for where do you want it sent, and
okay.
that's where you would fill in your email address. So at this point in time, it only automatically sends it to the OAC address, and you can fill in other addresses. Some people are still filling in any regionals or any of the officers they need to, but they don't have to because I forward it. I mean, I look at every application I get and I check to see who does it need to go to, which is part of the reason why an org chart is really important.
I'm asking because whenever I do an application, I always grab my most recent previous application. I do.
Yeah.
And use that. And so that's information that people probably want to keep for themselves to
Right.
use for the future.
Yep, agreed. Are there other questions, ideas? But in the case, I do think that having a fillable PDF, some people would be more comfortable with that. So I'm still going to put that down as something we should have available.
Yeah, no. And I mean, you will have people that want to fill it in by hand and do it like that. I've seen way too many printed, fill in by hand, scanned PDF applications because I'm a techie person and it was non-trivial to force that PDF to be fill-inable.
Right. Yeah. It's let me just say the state of Texas has lots of filled in PDF forms there. Yay.
You can do it.
Yeah.
No,
What are some other things that people can think of that would be helpful to make it easier for you to apply for positions? Well, I know Julie just recently used the form online because she applied for financial committee member. Julie, what did you feel? Did you feel like it was relatively easy?
She might not be able to hear us right now.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh. She's typing.
I need to, yeah. So the job descriptions are definitely something so yeah, you missed the beginning of this. So when I originally took over this position, when I originally created this position for myself, I was going to create, I'll answer the second one too. So I was going to create job descriptions. Now the job description for financial committee member at large, that's a baronial level. I cannot go down to a baronial level thing. That's something that the barony is going to have to do on its own. But I was going to, my original goal was job descriptions and onboarding packets, for lack of a better way of describing it. And so as I told everybody else, as I sat down, I realized that first I need to get people to apply, so I need to make the application process easier. And then I sat down, then we were realizing that I need to have an organizational chart, so I have who all needs to get what and where all everybody reports to. Because, for example, the local rapier marshal reports to the kingdom rapier marshal, but the kingdom rapier marshal reports to the earl marshal, right? But in addition, we have the whole youth rapier marshal who reports actually directly to the kingdom earl marshal, doesn't report to the rapier marshal, but of course the rapier marshal does need to know what's going on in the youth rapier. So there's those challenges. So that's one of the things. As far as the upload the documents, unfortunately, our system is not compatible with that. That's why we have to have you send it to us, Julie. It was something I talked to John about. I said, hey, can we have a way of just uploading? And John told me that no. So that's something, sorry. That's something that we were kind of told we were limited by our system, the online form system that he's using. Apparently will not allow for attachments. I'm like, well, that's really kind of limited on our situation because attachments would be helpful. For example, when you have your membership card, or as I was saying earlier, your CVs, or there could be a lot of other things. One of the other things I realized was, of course, that we needed to have a helps wanted page. So that's why I need to send everybody email. It's the first, but that's why I started posting on our Facebook group. These are the offices at the kingdom level that are open, because I was frustrated when I heard of a regional position that was open, but it had gotten lost in all the mess and nobody saw it, as it happens with Facebook. And my next step actually is probably to go ahead and create that help wanted page on the web page as well, so that we have yet another place where people can easily go, oh, I wonder if the regional such and such, or I wonder if the Minister of Arts and Sciences is open for applications at a kingdom level. In the long run, I'm hoping that we can bring this down to a baronial level, shire level, canton level, but I'm not quite seeing how that will fill in, because this is such a new process that we have to figure some of those things out. So Holly said that in Lowcock, they already have an established process. And I asked her to share her process. So maybe she'll type it up, or maybe she'll talk to me. Because I would love to hear other people's processes, because I'm making it up as I go along. So,
are you also going to have sort of a established date of when people should be moving in and out of their offices?
So at this point in time, it is still up to the kingdom level offices to keep their chart of when people are supposed to be going in and out. But I'm hoping that becomes part of the officer application coordinator, or the HR position, because I think in the long run, the warrant probably would be better served under that position, because they're going to have a better knowledge of what that is. I was supposed to email John about the kingdom page a while ago, and I'm writing myself a note so I don't forget.
Because I've been seeing a tiny minuscule piece of this, just trying to figure out all of the marshalate officers, and that's shockingly difficult. And we already had a system in place, and it was still difficult to chase through, and I need to go finish that job up, because and so I kind of almost can't imagine how hard it is, and it's also shocking that we don't have that information.
Well, so some of the challenge that OnStora has had is that our transfer to database didn't occur when it should have. I mean, so back when I was waiver secretary, which was back before I was Baroness, so 10 years, let's say, ago, I'm like, we need to make this a database. There was no reason for our waivers to not be on a database. And actually, we did create a database, but the challenge was that the Seneschal report wasn't online. It was still you send an email, and so you can't say, oh well, these groups had these practices, so we should have a waiver for these days. And so Julie, let me finish my thought. Sorry. So we're slowly now getting online reports, which means that more automation can occur. The lack of automation in our system is what appalls me. I mean, even as the waiver secretary, I was trying to get this database to be created, and it really, I think I don't know if it's been changed back then. All we successfully got was at least the storage of the waivers were on a database system. But we hadn't gotten the whole, this group had these practices, and I mean, just, we should be more automated than we are. But people say that they'll do it, but then they get another project that's a lot more interesting. So Julie, as far as the intern and deputy programs, so every office is open for a deputy. The challenge is that is the nature of our population. Our population, almost every one of us is a little bit shy, a little bit uncertain of themselves, a little bit of all that. I mean, let's face it, that's just the majority of our population. And so every office is open for deputies. Some people are not inclined to ask. They're going to always ask. But some people are going to be less pushy about asking, right? And so it's kind of a two-way thing, where it's as important for the person who wants to do it to kind of go, hey, I want to do it, as the person who needs the deputies to say, hey, I need deputies. And it's, I hate saying that in that way because it's frustrating, but it everybody has that problem, you know. And like even my position, like I need a deputy. I don't have a deputy right now, but I don't even know what I'm doing, so I don't know how I would train a deputy. So all the kingdom officers, all of your major officers, seneschal, treasurer, all of them have deputies, every single one of them. We have emergency replacement deputies. They have to have them because if an if an emergency occurs, somebody has to be able to step in. So, you know, any of our main offices have those deputies. It's when you talk about the sub offices, I guess, the ones that aren't necessarily the ones listed in corpora. So in Bringelod, because I know Bringelod, and you do too, in Bringelod, the member at large isn't going to have a deputy because that's not, you know, or the I've lost words.
I'll chime. I was Minister of Arts and Science, and I technically had deputy, which pretty much meant that I CC'd him on all of my emails so that he could watch the reporting and how that happened for 6 months or so before he then put in his application for my job. I didn't really need a deputy, but by having one, he was able to at least see a little bit of what it took.
Well, and even like I am also Deputy Minister of Arts and Science in the Barony now, and so he CCs me on the reports, but also I will do special projects for him, like I'll run special little tournaments. So some of it is also what do you want to make of it. We have the challenge of there's nothing set in stone in any of our groups, right? It's all flexible. You know, from kingdom down to shires, we have some flexibility. We're not a kingdom of rules and policies. We just aren't. There are other kingdoms that are a lot more of this is how it shall be done, and this is what you will do, and this is how it goes. We are a little more flexible. We have some rules. You have to have an emergency replacement deputy for the major offices. So that's seneschal, exchequer. Any of the marshals have to have deputies. Minister of Arts and Sciences, chronicler. I'm sure there's somebody I'm missing. Herald, there we go. Those have to have deputies, but a lot of times it depends on what that officer and what their strengths and weaknesses there are on how they're going to utilize their deputies. Some officers never utilize their deputies. When I was seneschal, my deputy, they took care of waivers when I couldn't be at practice, which was maybe once a month, and I copied them on reports. I made sure that they knew the problems that were happening, but that was the extent. I didn't have them be in charge of something because that wasn't what was needed at the time. But other deputies, sometimes I'm using seneschal because it's something I'm very comfortable with. They might use their deputy to be in charge of things like Sherwood Forest Organization as an example in our barony, or in charge of demos, or in charge of school demos, depending on what your group needs. So there's that issue. I highly encourage everybody, if you have if you have an idea, talk to people about it. You know, if you know, I really want to see us get to all the movies that are related to the society and us have demos, and so I want to do this. Talk to the seneschal about it, or the hospitaller about it, and say, hey, I want to do this, and you know, start off, and then and then take on as a deputy. I mean, so that's one of my. I'm a big believer in what do you want to do? Follow your passion. I'm a big believer in following your passion. I tell pretty much every one of my students, what do you like to do? Do that. So Holly is saying some things over here, and I want to read it really quick. So she's from Locock. she says that they have the dates when the applications are due are published, which ours are published on our on our Facebook page. They may or may not be published in our newsletter because after the due date for applications, we enter a commentary period where the populace to offer any comments. That's actually pretty awesome. We don't have a commentary time. In our kingdom, it's our baron and baroness or our crown have a veto right, and it's appointed by the officer, and the regional. So regional will appoint local, kingdom will appoint regional, society will appoint kingdom. So there's some vetoes from the nobility or from the leadership, but there's not a commentary time from the populace, which I think is a great idea, but we don't do that. So that would be a massive cultural change. The help wanted page, which I need to talk to, the officer needs to have at least one deputy because it's a requirement. They have a lot of policies, but they still have a problem with recruitment and retention and getting newer people to feel comfortable applying for officer roles. And so I think this is a common issue that we have in the society across the board. Even if you have it kind of pretty clear, getting people to be excited about applying for those positions, and I have friends of mine who go, well, I would be a such and such, but there's just so much, and this is even in Austria, right? There's just so many policies that we have to follow, and it's just too much. I don't want to deal with it. I'm like, well, okay. And then I have other people who go, well, I really want to do something, but I don't know what that means, and so I don't know how to do it, and that's where there's a fine balance between all of that. And I admit I don't know how to approach that. I don't know. All I know as a recruitment, in HR, the things I know is to tell people about the jobs. Yep, you're right, that you get out what you put in. But all I know to get people to do is you tell them about the jobs, you make it so they can find the application, and you encourage, and you just, everybody has to be excited about it. That's part of the reason why I'm like, do the jobs you love. Don't do the jobs that, well, I guess I need to go be seneschal because somebody needs to be seneschal, but I don't really know what to do in seneschal. I don't really want to do it. But, you're not going to do a good job in that, right? You're going to go, And yeah, okay, there are going to be times a job has to be done. Somebody has to go clean out the porta potties. Nobody wants to go, yay, porta potties. But somebody has to go clean out the porta potties. So there are going to be jobs that have to be done. But when we have those jobs, we try to spread out that work, right? You don't want somebody to have to clean out all porta potties all week long because they're at Gulf War. And okay, Gulf War porta potties is kind of fun because you get to drive the golf cart, but and double points.
So I sometimes feel, at least at the baronial level, that we have too many positions. And since, especially on the smaller baronies or the less active baronies, you end up always scrambling to find enough people to fill the positions, and you almost get to the play round robin with all of the positions. And I feel like sometimes some of the jobs would be better served by reducing and then assigning them as deputies.
You're a woman after my own heart. There's a reason why I like you.
Sorry.
This is actually a constant argument we have. Everybody goes, oh, well, we need to have a minister of children. Oh, well, we need to have a this. Oh, we need to have a that. Do we need to have it? Evaluate the needs of your barony. If you don't have but one rapier fighter and they live close enough to another group that they can go fight over at that other group, do you really need to have a rapier marshal? If you have children, but they don't come to events, or the children go, I don't want to do that. I don't really like children's activities. My son hated children's activities. He went to children's activities once when he was 5, and he's like, I am never going again. Don't make me do that. And it was, I'll admit, it was because he went to children's activities. They said, you're going to learn an XYZ, whatever it was, I don't remember. And I did homeschool my child, so I went to these children's activities, and they didn't teach him about XYZ. Instead, they played chase all day long, and it made him mad. So he pretty much blew it off from the time he was like 5. So you know, he didn't want children's activities. Some kids want it, some kids don't. Some kids want to participate with adults, screw the children's activities. Other children want to have these activities that are at their level, at their lower level, not lower, at a simpler level. There we go. And so it depends on your child. It depends on the parents around. It depends on lots of things. So Minister of Children is one of my big ones of don't have an MOC unless you have somebody who really wants to do it and will follow through. Otherwise, just have an MOC for the event.
Exactly. At least for us here, if we can get someone tasked to do children's activities for an event, that's perfect. We don't, with how Austin is set up, blah, 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 we're not going to be doing children's activities at PIP or anything. And like, I worry and like it the same way how our current seneschal split off social media and demos, and I think we have an Instagram deputy, and
no, we only have the social media deputy. The social media deputy it has kind of tasked somebody else to do the Instagram stuff.
That's it, yeah.
There. So it's not that they're an official deputy. They just
task somebody else. But
I know this because the social media is in my house.
I know.
But I agree.
Saying I'm going to create deputies to do these roles, and then if it needs to be backed off, that's a lot easier than having a more official role that has to be rolled back.
Right, and that's where each group is going to have to be served by what is needed by their group. Mm-hmm. So if you're Bernie or you're Shire or whatever, you only have 2 buckets worth of stuff. You don't need a quartermaster. You don't need somebody who's in charge of making sure that your shed is clean and that everything's been accounted for, it comes back, because you only have 2 buckets worth of stuff that can be done at a seneschal level. Other groups, you need to have a quartermaster. It just depends on what happens. Sometimes that quartermaster is just appointed for an event. You have a quartermaster for an event, you let it go. Other times you have a quartermaster for your group. It just depends on your group. Bringwell went with the quartermaster for the Barony because we were doing so many demos that things got checked out that it was more than just an event. But other groups don't check out their stuff except for at events, so that's fine. The roles in the offices is really getting people to do the things is challenging, because you're right. I mean, it comes down to the more we have written down as far as this is what the job description is, the better. Julie, you might be more comfortable. You might have been comfortable being seneschal, but how would you know? Because you don't have what all that entails. Because I'm reading you have an administration background. Maybe you'd be a really great chronicler, but you don't know what all that entails. You don't know what all that means, because even though it might be kind of a standard set, there are going to be slight nuances in any group. And that's where having those officer descriptions at a kingdom level working down does help. But it doesn't have to start at kingdom. I know that many baronies have written up officer descriptions in the past. I think I can find it Bringwell somewhere. If you
Robert just did a push to get them written up.
We should have the old one from a while ago. He should have it. I'll see if I can find it. But it's changed. That's the other problem that you have with job descriptions is, what the job description was 15 years ago and what the job description is today is vastly different. Even 5 years ago, you really didn't have to be on Facebook. It didn't really matter. Everything was still okay, maybe not 5, but at least 7 years ago, everything was primarily done via our email list. You didn't have to do Facebook. You could choose to be there or not. Somebody else could tell you what's happening on Facebook. But these days, if you want to be seneschal, you've got to be on Facebook. You have to be there because you have to know what's happening, because email lists are pretty much not used anymore. So there's those challenges, but I still agree that it would be easier to update. Hi, Dan.
And he runs away.
Yeah, I don't blame him. And it would be easier to update descriptions that we have than to create new descriptions. And that's always the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Julie, if you were talking to us, you're still muted. Okay.
Okay.
I thought so, but just checking. Hi, how are you? So I have gotten a PDF form. I think would still be a good idea. Having the warrant list in the long run for the position would be good. Warrants for all the officers. Creating the kingdom level help wanted page would be a useful thing. What other ideas do you guys have? What would make it easier for you to apply? I'm going to call on Maria because she's sitting there and I know she's there. She just hasn't said anything all day long. She going to talk to me? No. Okay, Jennifer, what about you? What would be good for you?
Actually, a lot of the things that you've mentioned, I was going to bring up, but you've already got it in motion, because I've actually been seeking positions, and trying to find them is one of the hardest things, like knowing what's available, what's not available. So the help wanted list, all of those things are really good. And I like the organizational chart, so you know who exactly you're working with and who you're under, and more information is better than none, right?
I agree.
And I know that our local seneschal is already writing our officer manual, I think, for us. So, like I said, everything that you've mentioned are needs, but you're already implementing a lot of it. So,
well, I'm going to try to.
but it's awesome. At least that you're starting that. You know what I mean? And you were talking about how to kind of get people interested. One of the things that I suggested last year, and I think they're really looking at it as far as from the hospitaler side of things, when new people come in, is almost like a mentorship, sit and ask them what they're interested in and kind of guide them to those places, because new people are super nervous and they don't want to ask questions or dig deep and go jump both feet in, like I did, I think 11 years ago.
One of the questions I have, this is kind of a hospitaler-ish kind of thing. I'm not a great hospitaler, please understand. I do well at talking to people, but I'm not one of those. I think I've been in society too long to be a very good hospitaler. But one of the questions I have is, so when I was brand new, I can at least sort of remember that I wouldn't have known what I wanted to do. I would have had no idea. So would it serve the groups, and this is something for everybody to think about, to have so you've been in this SCA for a year, what next type classes? So maybe I should mention that to the hospitaler.
Exactly. And even doing like a meet and greet for new people, so they can meet all the officers and kind of get an idea of what the positions are, and just kind of get an idea of where they want to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you act like you're interested in somebody taking your position, then they're going to probably be more apt to want to take it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you share the enthusiasm with them of your job. And so a lot of times, like when I started out, I was at the Canton of Score Guard, and they had like 2 positions available immediately, and we were brand new, and they said, "Here, do you want to join?" And we both jumped in. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
So in that way, it was a very small group who was highly in need of officers. So I kind of, like I said, jumped in both feet. But I also had to stop for my master's program. So I came tonight to kind of hopefully get some insight of, I got to a certain position and then I stopped. I had to. And now I'm trying to spin my wheels again and try to get started and find what my passion is again, and those kind of things. But weeding my way through the paperwork and finding the positions and getting the idea of what the position entails is really important. Knowing what you're getting yourself into, I think is probably one of the most important things, is understanding what you're going to step into it, at least a broad view of it. Like my husband took the seneschal position for a year, and he learned it, just jumping in and doing it. So,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, you've answered a lot of my questions as far as what the plan is and how to seek the information and that kind of thing. So good job for you jumping into that.
So for you, you think this having even short little blurbs of what a seneschal is would be helpful. So getting that job description out would be extremely helpful. Okay.
And I don't know about the kingdom level. I mean, I think if you go to a round table, you get a really good idea of the positions. You can go to the meetings and learn what they are without actually applying, right?
Right.
So,
I mean, you can take all the warranty classes too.
Yeah, just having a blurb so you know kind of if it does fit what you can bring to the table. You know what I mean? Because I don't think I actually did a short stint as a seneschal, but I don't feel like I'm more of a people person rather than the paperwork person, like you were talking about, because, you know, that's just who I am. I'm the mediator. I'm the good person to step in between those situations, but the paperwork and the policy was, yeah.
So I'm actually going to use the seneschal a little bit just because I am entertained by seneschal. So Pug, if whoever doesn't know, Pug is my husband. So Master Pug is my husband. He is currently Kingdom Royal Marshal, but he was Kingdom Seneschal at one point in time. He and I have both been Baronial Seneschal, and he and I have both been Regional Seneschal. I have not yet been Kingdom Seneschal. And we're very different personalities. We go well together, but we're very different personalities. And I'm very much a people person. He's very much this is the rules, and we will make the rules either be the way we need them to be, or we're going to follow the rules, whichever. That's fine, but the rules are going to happen this way, and we're going to be fair about everything, and that's great. I mean, I'm fair too, but I'm just more of a people person. He was he was a pretty decent Baronial Seneschal for what we needed at the time. He had to deal with somebody stealing money at an event. He had to deal with a child peeing on another child at a fighter practice. He did that very well. So he was a good Baronial Seneschal. He was a horrible Regional Seneschal. Horrible Regional Seneschal. Because at the Baronial level, they were his people. So he could be a people person because they were his people. At a Regional Seneschal, you have to still be a kind of a people person because you have to primarily deal with conflicts. Otherwise, you're just pushing up the paperwork. You're not really doing much. You're dealing with conflicts. And he was a horrible Regional Seneschal. He's like, why are you bothering me with this? He was a pretty awesome Kingdom Seneschal. He had problems he had to deal with. He dealt with them. You know, everybody was his people on some level, but he didn't have to deal with them at a people level. It was these are players on a screen. I'm going to deal with the players on the screen and make it so that everybody is copacetic. So I guess for me, Seneschal that's where, for me especially, Seneschal, you have to balance out. I mean, Avery is very much a people person. Our current Kingdom Seneschal, he is a people person. Rules, regulations, not his strong suit. That's where he goes back and says, hey, who can tell me what the rule is on this? Hey, what do we need here? But we need a people person right now, especially with what's going on. We need that people person. We need somebody who's going to be there for everybody to encourage. So that's good. But I suspect that following Avery, we're going to need a rules person. We're going to need somebody who goes, this is the rules. This is what we're going to do. So it's not going to be me. I'm not doing it. So, yeah, that's Seneschal. The other thing that people say is, oh, well, I wouldn't be a good Seneschal because I can't run an event, or I would be a good Seneschal because I can run an event. They're not the same skills. Events are a day, 2 days, that's only a little bit. That doesn't require a lot of attention span. It doesn't require you to keep the whole picture in your mind's eye for the whole time, right? Well, at Seneschal, you have to recognize that George and Scott really don't get along, but George is really good with Stephen, and Scott's really good friends with Stephen. So you get George and Scott and Stephen to work together because that's how you do things, right? I mean, that's simplifying some things, but you have to recognize, I hate saying it, but the manipulation of the people to get to where you need to, the common good, right? So for me, it depends on what your group needs on if you need the people person, you need the rules person.
So if I can back up a couple conversations. We were talking about how to get new people in and attending. And that had me sitting here thinking about, because I've only been in the society for 5 years now, and I've held offices for about 4 years of that. And how I transferred was I started attending business meetings. And sitting in those meetings, realizing I was one of the few people in those meetings not currently holding the office, which tells you something about the attendance at our business meetings at the time. We've improved that. But then that's when, our Minister of Arts and Science says, hey, I need a deputy. And I'm like, I know her. I like her. I can be your deputy. And that was my gateway drug into holding offices. And so like we're doing the whole Newcomers Academy stuff, have the field trip for the Newcomers Academy to have everyone come to a business meeting or something, especially now that we're holding them on Zoom.
Right.
But just as a recent experience gateway drug, stepping my foot in there and looking at the not dressing up in pretty clothes part of this game was what it took for me.
Well, and that actually leads me to a question. So there's 3 people who are not from Bring-A-Lot on this call. So I'm going to ask you, do y'all have your business meetings in SCA garb or in modern clothes?
Modern.
Okay. Holly, do you have your local baronial meetings in SCA clothes or modern clothes? And Michelle, are you actually there? Okay, so Holly says modern. And we host not only, just for Holly's sake, we host not only Bring-A-Lot hosts not only our local, so Austin, Texas hosts not only our local business meetings in modern, but the Kingdom actually hosts our in-person twice a year business meeting in modern clothes as well. Now this year, because of COVID-19, our roundtable, which is our in-person, will be actually virtually. There we go. Eventually, I'll get those words.
How long has your kingdom been having, because I'm from Artemisia, and
hi. Okay.
Seneschal for our local group, and we hold business meetings locally every month. But I was a kingdom officer for 6 years, and I never went to. There was never an officers meeting, so this is a new concept for me.
So our kingdom when did we start? I'm going to say it's been at least 15 years that we started roundtable, and it's twice a year, and we use that roundtable weekend. It's one day. We don't charge an event fee. We come in modern clothes, and either the kingdom pays for it, or the local group, if they can afford it, pays for it. We use that day to have any of our warranting classes, so our treasurers, our seneschal. We also have any open meetings, like the marshalate will get together and talk about any of the law changes. Our ANS ministers will get together and talk about things. So we have open meetings as well as warranting classes, and then we have a State of the Union address, for lack of a better, State of the Kingdom address is what they call it. And as Nikkei's pointed out, it's also the weekend after Crown, so we have our new heirs. So it's kind of a chance for everybody to get together and have the training. Our challenge that I have noticed in our kingdom is that we've gotten to this place where we think that warranting classes can only happen at roundtable, and that's not at all the case. And so that's one of the things we're trying to also break, is that it can only happen then. Well, no, it can happen other times. That's just where we try to make sure we have any of our warranting classes that we require, which is treasurer and seneschal are the only required ones, but they encourage other officers to take the heralds to have a warranting class, and maybe somebody else.
Marshalate.
Does the marshalate have a warranting class?
I thought they did.
I don't think they do.
So I said that, and then I realized, no, I don't think they did, because I hung out with Pug all last.
Yeah, I'm like,
roundtable.
I don't think, I knew that JP had tried to kind of push more warranting type classes, and I think that has gone away. They have, now the Armored Combat has a test that they have to take still to get their marshaling.
Authorizing marshal.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. You know that better than me.
And I think the reason I was confused was because we have warranted marshals, but you become a warranted marshal not by taking a class, but by doing 3 other things.
XYZs, yeah.
Yeah.
Bye, Jennifer. So does that answer your question, Michelle?
Yes, it does. And actually, it's something that I think I'm actually going to bring up to my own kingdom, because like they offer an exchequer class once a year, and it's a random weekend. And yeah, you find out about it right beforehand. So if you can't make it, you can't make it.
Right.
And
yeah, that's problematic.
yeah, I think this is, that kind of an idea is a good one. And
well, in our kingdom's going this, so because of COVID-19, our next one is scheduled for July, and it's going to be online. And I think warranting classes will still be offered. And so a lot of people are kind of hoping that we make that just be an online instead of in-person weekend anyways, because,
Texas is very big.
So, and there's pluses and minuses. Some people hate it. I'm one that loves it. So, everybody has their things. I'm one of those sickos. So Michelle, what kind of problems do you guys have with recruiting new officers?
Well, I mean, I can tell you, like at our local baronial level, it's almost impossible to get anyone to do an office. I'm the seneschal. I'm also the list mistress.
See, we don't have an official list mistress office on Stura, so Nikkei's and I are frequently list mistresses, but we don't have an official office.
Well, and like our Kingdom Chronicler, she is on year 5 and has been asking for LOIs for the past 2.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
In our kingdom, and I mean, it's not kingdom-wide, because obviously there are some groups that they have no problem filling the offices, but in our local barony and sometimes at kingdom, it's really, really hard to fill the offices. And people just, I don't know why they don't want to do it. I would posit that people, because there's no real explanation anywhere, there's no officer training classes. I'm shocked by Atlantea's online university, because I'm like, oh my gosh, there are classes for every single officer. You actually can learn how to do your job from somebody, instead of, oh, well, yeah, this person had the office and they're gone now, and they taught you nothing. And so these are the kind of things I'm trying to get into my local group and my kingdom, so that we don't have these issues, so that people, it's not the mystery of how to do this office, it's up front.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things I have noticed, and I think it's helping our local group to some extent, is we go through these waves. I don't know how long you've been playing. I've been playing for 30 years. So, but we go through these waves of, oh, well, so-and-so is going to become seneschal. Oh, I'm sorry, instead of congratulations, and those are the things that I also think deter volunteers, is the whole, oh, well, you just took on this office, so that's a big deal, instead of going, wow, thank you so much, and congratulations, you got this position, and being excited for those individuals as well.
It feels sometimes like the hospitaller and the MOC position are the redheaded stepchildren. That those are the ones that seem to be the hardest to fill and to keep filled.
Well, an MOC is very difficult, especially at local levels, because like I said, it just, I don't know at a local level if you need an MOC, unless you're going to be doing activities at fighter practice or at your business meetings or anything like that. Do you really need an MOC position? You need it for the event, and things like that. And it's something that, and then, I mean, of course, we always need a hospitaller, and that one, we so often throw in a brand new person into that position, and there's pluses and minuses to that. the plus is that because they're a brand new person, they're usually pretty excited about the SCA, and they're not disappointed and frustrated about how the sausage is made. But the disadvantage is they don't necessarily know all the resources that are available to them.
And I know even getting the MOCs at the regional level and the kingdom level has been problematic. That
Right.
I want to say we had kingdom and we had like 3 local and no regionals last time I was at a round table.
Well, and sometimes, and that's the other challenge is, like our regional offices, again, each office and each kingdom is going to have different needs, and it's going to change at different times, so we have to recognize when it's no longer necessary to have regional MOCs. The reason why regions were created originally, because I was here when we did that, was to make it easier for the kingdom level office to pull together all the reports. So it was the regional level office that had to look through the reports, pull it together, send it to the kingdom, so that the kingdom didn't have to sit there and find the problems. It was the regional's job to find the problems. Kingdom's job was to mitigate any kingdom level problems. But if it was just a local baronial level, the kingdom didn't need to be involved. Well, some offices that's necessary. Some it's not anymore. One, we have social media and we have email, and it's a lot easier to get a hold of one another than it was back 25 years ago. And so we don't have to have those regions in some cases, but in other cases, it might be even more important. It might become very important to have regional social media liaisons in addition to your baronial. That might become an extremely valuable job because they're going to have to, monitor all of this stuff. And so that's the side that the society has to recognize, is that we are a growing, changing organization, even though we are studying a time that's long ago. With what has happened, we have to, with social media and with computers, we just have to recognize and change. I know that our barony, which Michelle, you're on a chat with 3 of us being from the same barony, we had a big discussion on whether or not we were going to get off of Facebook and go to Discord. And, is it worth it? Well, we don't still know, but it is definitely worth recognizing that Facebook has got its own challenges, and mailing lists have gone away. So people who sit there and go, oh, well, we need to send it to the mailing list, nobody cares. Let's just recognize that nobody cares about a mailing list anymore in our barony. But other baronies or other shires or whatever might be different, and we can't assume that even within the kingdom you have the same needs. And so everybody has to recognize what is the needs, and we have to address the needs as needed. I can't imagine that Ringwood will ever not need a rapier marshal, but there could come a time maybe we all go to live steel, and so we don't fight rapier anymore. These things could happen.
And to that extent, we have areas where we don't have a rapier marshal, but we do make sure that we have an authorizing marshal for that region, or we have a brand new shiny person as a rapier marshal and a separate authorizing marshal, because that shiny new fresh face isn't really qualified to be an authorizing marshal.
Right. And and so that's where it is required by the volunteers, and that being not just brand new members, but also the leaders that have held these positions, or the leaders who happen to know the movers and shakers, to stay open and to keep that communication line going. I tell people all the time, the organization, as Julie said, the organization is what you put in it, right? Well, it's also only as good as what you ask of it. So it's my responsibility as somebody who's been in this barony to keep it growing and to listen to others. It's my responsibility as somebody who's been in this kingdom to listen and to try to help people get there. But it's your responsibility as somebody who's new to go, hey, I don't understand, and that's how we grow and change. Even at work, you go to a new job, you get a new job, and they say, oh, can you look at all our documentation and tell us where we messed up? Because after a while, you've been in it too long. You don't see where you've messed up. And so that's why we have to encourage our new people to apply. And we have to encourage our new people to join, right? Because they're the ones that tell us, but yeah, you forgot us here. Or, hey, this doesn't make sense. Because if it doesn't make sense to you, it probably doesn't make sense to somebody who's been in for even 30 years, but they're just too afraid to ask. I mean, there comes a place where, it's like, that's the way it's always been. And that's stupid too. The way it's always been is a bad reason.
Why? Yeah, he always asks the why.
A lot about doing things with Bryn Glad has seemed, it just seemed, and I've been a member for almost 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone to 4 candle messes. It just seemed like the same 12 people did everything.
And that is true. You're right. And it's partially because nobody knows who wants to do it, partially because nobody else volunteers. And so the people who make it happen just go, okay, well, we're going to make it happen. But that being said, Nikkei's wasn't one of the 12 people 5 years ago, and you're starting to be one of those 12 people who do the things, and you aren't one of those 12 people 3.5 years ago. And so we appreciate the people who are coming in and say, I'll take that. And you're like, yes, okay, cool. I can sit down and just enjoy this event, or I can do this over here that I've always wanted to do, but because nobody else is willing to decorate, I'm going to do. Well, okay, so for me, it was I always wanted to decorate the hall, so I got to do this candlemas because I didn't have to do the other things. But so yeah, you're right. It goes through waves. That's why we have to encourage new people. But you're right.
And honestly, just starting by broadcasting the meetings so that you could see it was a big thing, because I wouldn't have known that they needed somebody to do Yule because I didn't know where the meetings were, or I wasn't paying attention. And we live in Liberty Hill. We're about 25 miles north, so we don't want to run into Austin every evening for stuff, because it's a drain on the resources. Mm-hmm. So just putting the meetings online made that stuff more accessible. Having these workshops and classes has made things more accessible.
I do think that COVID-19 has made some things better.
Absolutely.
But it's changing the society.
And it has to. Necessity is the mother of invention. Mm-hmm. So, and I mean, look at all the ways things have expanded. Normally, you'd go to Candlemas, you'd only get to one of the 4 classes you'd want to see, and you couldn't hear half of it because there's so much stuff going on. So all these wonderful classes that we can sit on and do nothing but focus on that one class, it's amazing.
Right. So Michelle, just so you know, our barony, even before COVID-19, our Seneschal had his lady start recording our business meetings. So we were meeting in person, but she would record a business meeting and broadcast it to our Facebook group. And that allowed people to watch. They weren't being able to vote necessarily, but they were able to watch and see what was happening so that they could, and they would type, so that was kind of.
We've been doing virtual meetings for a couple months now, obviously because of COVID. Right. And, we've been, with the exception of the last month, we've been recording them and uploading them to our website. And then every week I actually get on our Facebook page and I make, an announcement like on Monday that, hey, these are open offices. This is what's going on. And unfortunately, I don't get a lot of engagement. And I don't know if our group is just apathetic or I don't know.
Yeah, that's problematic. Yeah, and so ours, of course, now are still being online, but it's been, when did we start broadcasting?
It was I'm trying to remember if we did start broadcasting at the previous place or not.
I thought it was maybe last June.
Yeah, it was whenever it was whenever Yule Revel bids were due. So
Because I put in my bid for Yule in July, so I must have watched the June meeting.
Okay.
yeah, so we've
Almost
been
a year now.
oh yeah, it's been almost a year. So yeah, we've been broadcasting for that long, and the first couple we had some more people watching than we usually have at our meeting, but it's slowly been building up on how many people we have watching the meeting and commenting on the meeting. Although last month's business meeting didn't have many people at the meeting.
That being said, I also feel like it opens up positions for people that would otherwise not be able to go, because the lady who just took over our exchequer position, she has a young kid, can't really make it, drive and kid and bedtime and all this sort of stuff. And being able to do the virtual meetings, it's going to open it up to other people, because, I mean, you, Julie, you guys live 25 minutes north. I live 20 minutes south, and traffic.
I only live 5 minutes away. What's y'all's
Yeah,
problem?
shush. I'm not talking to you.
Of course, I'm one of the few. So
I know, but especially with traffic. Okay, rush hour, Austin traffic. It can take. I have to leave at 6 if I leave from the house in order to make a 7 o'clock meeting on time, and being able to do it from the house. So I think that might serve to open up some of the positions to people.
I admit I'm a little concerned of how much are we going to keep online versus in person. We're still an in-person organization, not an online organization, and so that's where I get a little nervous. So
Agreed.
That's not necessarily for this discussion. Okay, is there anything else? Because if not, we can. I mean, I'm here for you guys at this point in time. Do y'all have any other recommendations, any other questions, any other, I mean, I appreciate the information I've gotten, because it definitely has shown me that, yes, I have the right path, but I also want to make it so that I want to hear from you guys, because I want to hear, I mean, I know that for Julie, the biggest thing is to bring it down to the baronial level. Well, I can't get to there, but I can get to the regional level, and hopefully once we get to that regional level, it can get down to the baronial levels. I think that us being at home has encouraged a lot more people to think about, okay, how do we document things? How do we write this down? SOPs are so important that I know that that's one of the things I'm working with even our events. That's why part of what I'm working with Colfina is having a standard operating procedure on events, because that makes it easier to do that. And Julie, if you want to write down your thoughts from running Yule Revel, that would help with getting some SOPs for Yule Revel, because Yule Revel is different than a fall baronial, which is different from a Candlemas. And so I would appreciate if you can write down, these are some of the takeaways you got, and I can write that up into some of what we have. We're working on that. But yeah, Michelle, all I can think of as far as for you with the whole barony is just to encourage and keep being positive. And I know it's a pain, because our barony has definitely gone through ways where we're having to struggle. I don't know what Artemisia's kingdom laws are. Our kingdom, actually back when Pug was kingdom seneschal, we kind of cut it down to the minimum offices as required by Kapora, which helped, because then when people say, oh, I want to be MOC, we go, oh, but we can't fill MOC until we fill the herald position. Are you willing to be herald? And we would do it that way. So we would keep them away from the non-required offices and encourage them to fill those required officers. And that kind of helped us build back the volunteer base. We still struggle. We still have like an applicant, but at least we have an applicant as opposed to no applicants.
See, I'm really lucky that we do have all of our required offices filled. Trying to get new people into those offices is almost impossible. And when it comes to event stewarding, it's almost non-existent. It's the same 4 of us who just keep taking turns. Like, I'm the seneschal. I shouldn't be the event steward. And yet I'm the one who was chosen to do the kingdom event. And I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah, that's harder. Yeah.
And then you're going to get burnout, and
Right.
you're not going to have anybody to do anything, because they're going to say, no, I can't take it anymore.
And that's
Yeah.
it's exactly what we're fighting. Is one of the people was like, nope, I'm sorry, I need to take time and concentrate on myself. I have a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old.
You do
And I'm
too.
already so I don't have really more time to devote to anything.
Yeah, no. And have you, I don't know how your kingdom runs events. With events, one of the things that I found that really helped was to find, like Nikkei's ran a Candlemas where the Seneschal was running the Candlemas, but she had 2 deputies, autocrats as well. So there was 3 of them in charge, so that the Seneschal didn't really have to do a whole lot because, well, she really
divided and conquered nicely
Yeah.
on that one, I think.
So
We're
have you?
actually going to experiment with getting events put together, like have the site reserved and then find the stewards.
That's the other thing our group is working on as well.
That helps a lot.
Our Candlemas event, we usually have one. We have one site we love to get, and if we can get that site, we book that site in a heartbeat. We have a harder time with our fall events because we got lazy. Our barony was very fortunate that we had Richard Garriott, Don Chamino, lived in Austin, and so he had purchased a piece of property that had resembled his Ultima Online village, and we were able to use it at a very inexpensive price, and then that privilege got taken away from us. Sums it up. And so we got lazy because we had years of having a great site up and not too far away for our indoor event that we had in February, and a great site that was in town for any other events that we wanted that were camping events. So we kind of forgot about any other sites in the world. And so we're having to work that up. But yeah, we definitely are one of those where we're working on trying to book a site in a year in advance, because also I don't know where exactly in Artemisia you're in, but Austin has skyrocketed as far as prices go, and so we have to, the cheaper sites we have to get booked as far in advance as possible so that we can get them.
One of our standard sites tripled in price. They want 1,500 standard, and it's like, nope, sorry, this event isn't big enough to support that.
Yeah.
How much?
1,500.
7,000, I think, was Castleton for our 40th year. $7,000.
You know, for our 20th year, we did more of an expensive site. How big are your events? Because we're not very big.
Oh, that was a 300 person, or
350.
350. That was a baronial 40th year.
Yeah.
$7,000.
That's just insane. I mean, honestly,
it was too much money.
It was
property to just buy it and build a permanent site, because we're like, that would be cheaper in the long run.
It's one of those that, I mean, we have, since before that, we hadn't used that site in 3 or 4 years. This is the Don Chamino's site, and it's crazy, but people are very nostalgic about it, and it is a gorgeous
It's a gorgeous site, and it's in town. I mean, it's in town on a lake. It's perfect location, but it's just too much money. And it's
half scale Globe Theater built on site. I mean, it's awesome. But
okay, that just sounds amazing.
It is amazing. If you are into horses, I would highly recommend you come to List at Castleton. It's not an SCA event. It's another nonprofit. They use that site. I would highly recommend it. And they also are, in association with the site is in association also is a group called the Baronsmen that came from the SCA, and they perform on the replica of the theater, and they are going to be doing a show for List at Castleton. Highly recommend you come down if you can, because it's an amazing site, but it's just too much money for us now.
Yeah.
Especially because they stopped maintaining it. I mean, but we got lazy, you know. And that's the challenge with even somebody building a site, which more or less kind of what happened for us, is that eventually that person gets married to a financier and she decides that they need to actually make money, things like that, you know. And so that's where we always, you know, our fortune was great. And we should have stayed on top of our issues while we were having such a lucky time.
Well, thank you so much for this. I've got to get off because I got to get my children fed. But thank you. I took a lot of stuff that I'm going to hope to implement.
All right. Well, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email address is myfanwy@pug.net. And please feel free, or you can send it to like oac@seneschal.onstore.org, and that's also me. And you have fun. Nice meeting you.
It was very nice to meet you. Thank you.
Okay.
So now we're down to 3. Do you have anything else, Julie?
You can probably turn off your recording if you want.
Maybe.